Hey, welcome back everybody to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and I love a cup of duty coffee, and I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
Yo, I'm Gooey.
And we returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek shows. And today we return to the American frontier with a film by one of Hollywood's greatest directors and an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine that puts its own spin on that film's themes of family and personal destiny. It's Rio Grande and the DS9 episode Sons and Daughters, or Rio Grande if you're John Wayne.
Yeah, I was gonna say something, but I didn't know. I didn't know.
It's
like,
yeah, the best.
Maybe
part
that's
is,
how they said it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the best part is when he's talking to an actor who's, I actually don't know, but probably playing somebody who's Mexican and saying it one way, and then he's like, "Yeah, we're out on the Rio Grande." It's like, okay, nobody tells the Duke how to pronounce things.
I'm not gonna say it that way.
You're not gonna say anything. So, yeah. Well, how you doing
today? I'm solid.
Yeah.
How are you?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I'm a liquid because it is hot here.
Oh, I like that.
Not the mercury isn't so high, but we've got the humidity going on, and so it's just like swimming through the air.
I went straight from work where I was inside and air conditioned directly down to my basement to record in the air conditioning. So I have no idea. Like, I was outside for a collective of 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So no idea how hot or cold it is here.
You live a charmed, protected life.
Yeah, I feel like pampered right now.
Well, it's only going to get worse as the summer goes on where I live, but because it's only June. And of course, it's also June, which is Pride Month. I don't know. There's not like everybody talks about it on the first day of June. Maybe that's like your unofficial Pride Day. But of course, the entire month is Pride Month. And of course, it's really like the anniversary of the Stonewall riots are at the end of the month. So that's really, people forget what Pride is all about, but that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I wonder if there's never been like an episode like based on that, has there?
For Star Trek?
Yeah. Like, cause they like to take the historical events, like we did the Attica riots and stuff. I wonder, that seems like I don't know. That seems like something you could make a pretty decent episode of a sci-fi show out of.
I suppose. Yeah, I honestly, I totally agree with you. I don't know. I mean, they've never had something like we talk about on Star Trek where there's something that's or on Backtrekking where there's something that's a direct metaphor for something. They've definitely had like people who are being oppressed just get fed up and do something about it. But yeah, I think that you could do that. The only problem is that it's not going to happen anytime soon because the way that the new shows are sort of designed, I don't think there's a lot of time to stop and have a contained plot that would refer to something else.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, we do our best to try to look for that stuff and try to talk about it on our podcast here, but it's so easy. It's so easy when you have, unfortunately, a episode written by a couple of white guys who love John Ford films, and then you go, "Hey, that looks a lot like this."
Maybe this is jumping ahead, but I feel like I get it though. With I feel like the westerns graft really well onto like Klingon kind of stories.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it. I mean, the last one we did was like a goofy holodeck episode, but still, like the idea of it. I just feel like tonally it works pretty well for what they're going for with like Worf and them. That
kind of man, the Western man. He's a stoic guy. He doesn't have a lot of time for feelings, but he's got a big heart. He's passionate inside.
Yeah.
That's definitely the Klingons. I was thinking about it too because I was just reading about John Ford over this past week and how, the guy made a ton of films and a lot of them were Westerns, but even the ones that weren't Westerns, he was using the same actors like John Wayne or like similar characters, his heroes. And thinking about how what we think about as the American movie star and hero is based a lot on our traditions of the heroes of the frontier and the Old West. It's part of like the DNA. Now you have a movie, you can do anything you want, and you can have a real sensey boy hero or a guy who's a coward. You can do whatever you want. You can play against those types, but I think that DNA is always sort of woven into what we think of a hero being.
Yeah, it's
in film,
right? It's always interesting, kind of like when we've covered some movies that are closer to this era, like you see like kind of almost a different sort of presentation of it. I mean, it's woven into our aspect, but I feel like going back to this, it feels, I don't want to say like pure, but it seems like it's, things kind of like evolve and change throughout the years. So it's kind of interesting to see it like almost from its source, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah, it's something that we're definitely going to talk about today when we compare our film and our episode. But I wanted to mention a news item that I saw that was about our boy Scott Bakula and Star Trek Enterprise. And I don't know if this is on like fan-sided or something like that, so I'm not sure how accurate this is. I love these articles that don't. I don't know why they don't. Is it just bad journalism to not have links to your sources, or is it a jealous thing where it's like, no, we want to be the source of the news. We don't want to write an article and then have it, have 3 other sites that we pulled from. And it's like, no, that's called, you are delivering the news to your audience. They don't read those sites. They read your site. And so you're providing that news thing that happened to them. It really pisses me off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are so many sites, news sites that are just copying the news that was posted somewhere else.
And that's true, but as somebody who has worked in that industry, I'm totally fine with that because there are people who don't read Variety. They're not going to do that. But if they read Trek.news or, TrekCore or something, you're going to get your news that way. And then that's fine. And if those sites are professionals, they will cite the source that they got it from, i.e. Variety or whatever. But it's these other sites, and I won't name them, who make these huge claims like, Avery Brooks is coming back for a DS9 reboot or whatever. And just knowing Avery Brooks, how old he is and how cranky he is, I'm fairly sure that's not true. But they don't provide any sources at all. And so even when they accidentally are doing journalism and not just like making things up or just, somebody said, you can't tell because they continue to have that policy of not having any links or to any other outside sites.
Yeah, I was thinking those sites are probably, it probably is bad journalism, but I'm thinking maybe they're self-conscious about the fact that, they just found it somewhere else, so they don't include it.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that the thing is that when you read the news, the news will do that. If the news interviews somebody, that's their source. That's the hyperlink. They're saying, Dr. So-and-so said this. But a lot of times we don't see behind the curtain that they are, CNN or whoever your news site is getting the basic information off the wire. They're getting it off the news feeds, and then they're taking that, and they might put, AP News on there or not, depending on what their contract is. And so we don't see that they're getting it themselves. They didn't just from the offices of CNN, create a conflict in the Middle East with their godlike powers, and now they're telling you about what they did. All news is reporting, it's all stealing from life. And I just don't...
What if these sites have a secret source that they can't reveal?
Right, but in that case...
It's Avery Brooks.
Yeah, it's Avery Brooks himself. He was, right. He was very, we're watching this like a hawk, wink. Yeah, but even when you do that, you can just say, first of all, don't run with an unsighted source if you can help it, or a secondhand source, but you can make it clear everything about them as much as possible. But they never do that. They just say, sources say, it's the equivalent of Donald Trump just go, a lot of people are saying this. It's like, are a lot of people saying that?
I'm so familiar with this in the video game world.
Really?
Of like every year there's always like, there's rumor that there's going to be a Zelda Netflix anime there's a Switch Pro coming, which is a current one now that actually has credence, but like that's been a rumor ever since the Switch launched, It's like, we're we're just around the corner from an announcement of of an upgraded Switch
with the OLED screen and everything. Yeah,
yeah.
I think with the chip shortage, just in general, and the uproar that the manufacturing industry is in, I think that Switch thing is probably. I'm sure it's like in the works, but it's probably going to be a while before it shows up. Considering I can't even give my money away to get a PS5.
Yeah, that's true. Wait, well, what's the Trek? We didn't get?
No,
we
didn't even
news.
get to the news item. The news item is that that Scott Bakula was in danger of being fired by the end of the third season of Enterprise. Yeah, apparently. They had problems with Enterprise. It was not as highly rated, either critically or in terms of the viewing figures as previous shows. I think that there was a thing that they wanted. They thought that it would actually be best for the show if they could wait a year to put it out, just to shore it up a little more, get an idea of where they're going. But that wouldn't work because the studio and Rick Berman wanted to get it out as soon as Voyager was off, so that we had, total Star Trek still going on. And so those were problems, and the ratings were falling. And apparently around the end of the third season, when they were thinking about whether they were going to renew it, the studio heads said, it's Bakula's fault. We got to get rid of this guy.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, we don't know who said this.
No, but we know who helped him, though, because Rick Berman was one. Rick Berman just didn't want to uproot the star of his entire show.
Yeah,
and
right.
A guy named Gary Hart, who was a UPN executive, was a big supporter of Star Trek and also Bakula. He was a fan of Bakula, too.
Yeah, I don't know. Something smells fishy on this one. I guess I don't know much about Scott Bakula, the dude. So,
well, it's funny. It's really funny because, of course, he would go on to continued, TV stardom and success in NCIS and other shows. But I don't know. Maybe they just thought that he was too old. I think his character of Archer was a very different captain than to the modern captains that we'd seen since Picard, and so
right, yeah.
Maybe they thought that wasn't. The recipe for success, but I don't know. Those are the reasons that I like Enterprise.
Certainly would be interesting. I mean, we're seeing it all the time now in Discovery, but it's interesting thinking about a show like that is, the classic Trek, the idea of it losing the captain midway through,
right?
It'd be like your alternate reality where Riker takes over in Best of Both Worlds, that'd be weird.
And I don't even know how that would be pulled off. So season 3 is the Xindi arc. I guess he blows up at the end instead of blowing the Xindi up and escaping.
Yeah, but you'd have to build someone else up to be captain, I feel like.
Yeah. I don't know who that would be. And there really
Trip.
Yeah, well, yeah, Trip. And there really aren't other captains like there are in other Trek shows because this is the only Warp 5 ship out there, and so I think they introduced the captain of the NX-02 at one point.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's cool that she's
I remember
she's
her,
a woman, yeah, and she kind of has a thing with Archer, but
yeah.
No offense to this actress, I'm about to offend this actress. She didn't have what it took. Do you know what I mean? She didn't wasn't very charismatic, didn't seem like the kind of person. It wasn't let's get a Jellicoe in here or something like that.
Yeah, I just remember her existing and her having a thing with Archer, but she's not very memorable otherwise. It's been a couple years, so definitely didn't leave an impression.
Maybe T'Pol takes over.
Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting, I guess. Would maybe explain how the arc of the history of Starfleet went, Yeah.
It'd be a little weird having a Vulcan be the head of the Earth ship Enterprise, but of course that all gets worked out in season 4.
Or they just bring in some actor, heavyweight actor, in to try and boost ratings. They're like, all right, new captain, Kelsey Grammer or something like that.
Hasselhoff, yeah.
Yeah. That'd be kind of cool. Like, just totally shape the new seasons around some famous guy.
And then if Archer is gone, then Shran doesn't have Archer to ask to help rescue his daughter in the last episode, and the pirates don't take over Enterprise, and Trip doesn't have to blow himself up. Trip's not dead. So I'm all.
This is like a technological exchange.
I love Archer, but I think I'd trade him for Trip.
Yeah, that's fair. Trip's pretty cool.
And Archer would be fine with it if he was sacrificing his life for a good cause.
Yeah, he's a solid dude.
So, yeah, that's our rewriting of the finale of Star Trek Enterprise. Let's move on to our featured subject for this week's episode. John Ford was one of Hollywood's most celebrated directors, both in the silent era, in which he made like 100 films, I think, and in the later era of sound. Over the course of his 5-decade career, he won a total of 6 Oscars, winning a record 4 Best Director awards for films like How Green Was My Valley and The Quiet Man. He's probably best remembered, though, for his Western pictures like Stagecoach, The Searchers, or The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, depicting heroic American frontiersmen, often played by John Wayne, dealing with the hardships of Western expansion. Ford made a trio of picks with Wayne informally dubbed the Cavalry Trilogy, in which the star portrayed a U.S. cavalry commander patrolling the Southwest in the aftermath of the U.S. Civil War. The third and last of those pictures revolves around Lieutenant Colonel Kirby York of the 2nd Cavalry Regiment as he attempts to quell attacks from marauding Apaches who take refuge in Mexico across the Rio Grande.
How did you fare on patrol?
We captured Natchez, the chief, 8 others before the Apaches reached the Rio Grande and crossed into Mexico. Pursuant to orders, I halted on our side of the river. Men didn't like it very much.
And neither do I, but that's the policy, and soldiers don't make policy.
I haven't seen you for 15 years.
So I've been told, sir.
Well, on the official record, you're my son. But on this post, you're just another trooper. I don't want you men to be fooled about what's coming up for you. I've chosen my way of life. Hope you have the guts to endure it.
He shouldn't have enlisted. I've come to take Jeff home.
He signed enlistment papers. He took an oath.
I'm gonna work this out my own way.
Had concentrated 3 tribes. This means real trouble, gentlemen.
I want you to cross the Rio Grande, hit the Apache and burn him out. I'm tired of hit and run. I'm sick of diplomatic hide and seek.
I waited a long time for that order, sir.
Ramrod, wreckage and ruin. Still the same curve.
Jeff must learn that a man's word to anything, even his own destruction, must be honored.
John Ford is one of those names that, he's just from a previous era, but it's also an era that, like, built this era. Do you know what I mean? Like, the people, like the kingdom of Egypt. There was, like, thousands of years of Egypt, right? The upper kingdom.
Okay. I like this metaphor.
The lower kingdom and all that. And so you're walking down the street to go to your job or to get something to eat, and you see a huge monument that's still there, and it's 500, 1,000, maybe 1,500 years old, built by some other guy, and it may,
right.
And maybe you pay attention to it, maybe it matters to your daily life, maybe not, but that guy probably built the aqueducts, he probably built a lot of stuff, all the stuff that's still around. Like, that's kind of John Ford.
That's even interesting, like himself, right? You're talking about within his own career.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean,
okay, cool. That's exactly what I was thinking too. Like, I confess a little ignorance because I know some of his, I've seen a lot of the like Stagecoach and those kind of movies, but then I was like, I was a little surprised like how far back his career went.
Yeah, and
I was like, oh wow, I had no idea. So it was kind of a shocking learning experience for me.
He was making films around the end of World War I, and then kept making films until the 60s with Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And the reason that I compared him to a dusty monolith is because a lot of people haven't seen his films. I mean, a lot of them have been lost. I think almost all of his silent films are lost. But even like his films from the 30s, films like Stagecoach, People don't. I don't think they watch those so much anymore. I don't have Turner Classic. I don't know if they're running them all the time, but like I've seen a lot of films and a lot of directors who have been directly influenced by Ford and his work. But like as far as like his body of work, I'm just not really that familiar with it.
Oh, really? Okay, that's surprising. I figured of the two of us, you would be more familiar.
I can't know everything.
That's fair. Yeah, I've seen a few. I think mostly through having older family members who are into westerns or specifically John Wayne movies. So
yeah.
Both catching them on TV all the time growing up, and then like when the DVD era came about, like that'd be like the classic Christmas gift is like the John Wayne 6 movie pack that's like just random movies thrown together.
Yeah.
So I've seen many through that, but there are also ones that I'm not like, it's just like cultural osmosis more than like me remembering like, oh yeah, The Searchers, like I love that movie. It's just like I've seen it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know it,
Yeah. And a lot of them might feel a little interchangeable in that they feature John Wayne playing a military guy. And then half the movie is people singing. And then there's a lot
that was sick.
And there's a
concert flick.
And then there's a lot of shots of like, yeah, it's a neat mesa they're standing in front of. And then,
there was
and also at least a half a dozen stuntmen die in horse stunts.
Okay, yeah, you just named like the 3 things I liked about the movie. So
yeah, you got to watch out for those horse stunts.
Yeah, the horse like when the first guys took off on those horses.
Yeah.
I lost my mind. I didn't expect it. I didn't think it would happen so suddenly and so impressively.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it would be like, oh wow, okay, he's standing on the horse, cool. Instead I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. And it's all ramped up a little bit or undercranked.
Oh, like sped up or
to make it seem faster. But no, what's really impressive is that, of the cast of the film, outside of John Wayne, you've got Ben Johnson, who plays Tyree. You've got Harry Carey Jr., who plays Sandy. And then you've got Claude Jarman, who plays Jeff, the son. And like all 3 of them, that was them. They did that writing. It wasn't a stuntman situation. Yeah. Like John Ford is like, I don't know. He's another one of those like kind of legendary like directors like John Huston or something like that, who's like kind of a mean guy. You wouldn't say that he's got a ton of art in his soul, and yet he can like, he controls his set. He gets his actors to do stuff, and he creates these sweeping beautiful pictures. And I was reading so it's hard to find information about this film, especially this one because it isn't exactly like one of John Ford's most famous films. But I found a forum from like 2007 where some extras who worked on the film, who must have been, they're probably dead now, but they must have been very old, were posting their experiences. And one of them was telling the story about how John Ford was like, we're going to have this Roman riding in this. Why? I don't know. It just seems cool. So he calls Harry Carey and Ben Johnson in, who they have riding experience. And he says, all right, boys, you know how to Roman ride? You know what that is? And they're like, not really. He's like, all right, you just do this, get up there, one and the other, just go. And then he gives them like 3 weeks to learn like this Roman riding. And they're falling off all the time and they're barely getting it right. And then they brought Claude Jarman in because he had just joined the picture. And they're like, all right, you got to do this. You ever ridden a horse? No. It's like, okay, we got to do some Roman riding. And he just gets up and he just starts going and he immediately has it. And the other 2 guys are like, fuck. So they all did their own stunts, falling off the horses. Claude Jarman biffs it off of the jump. That's him.
And that was not. Yeah.
And the extra was saying that Ford would do this shit all the time. Like they wouldn't shoot in sequence, but he would just plan out, shots for whenever. And they shot like that sequence in the middle of the pick. So if any one of these guys shatters their pelvis falling off of these horses, like the picture's fucked. Like there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
But Ford was just like, nah, so we just want to do this now.
I was surprised because I just assumed like, oh, these are like professional rodeo dudes doing this because you would want someone who can do that. But apparently, I don't know. It must be easy. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but it must be easier to do than I thought because I didn't. Like I said, I was surprised in the movie how quickly anyone could do it.
Yeah.
And I was surprised in the fiction of this movie that all those people could do it that quickly.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
They're all
I learned something watching the
dab
movie,
hand
sure.
with the horseflesh. And it's funny because this whole thing is shot, it's a Zack Snyder, right? It's all shot on this black and white
Right.
35 millimeter. So you can't tell who's on that horse. It doesn't have to be.
Especially because the shots were of them riding away.
Yeah, they're
behind.
riding way on the background. Yeah. So I just thought that was fascinating. And, it actually makes sense because the guys that I mentioned, Ben Johnson and Harry Carey Jr., worked with John Ford on a ton of his films, as did, of course, John Wayne. And in this Cavalry trilogy, it's an unofficial trilogy because Wayne is the lead in all three films, but he's not the same character in all three films. The first film that he's in, which is Fort Apache, he plays a character named Captain York, and they're fighting Apaches, but it's not the same character, I guess, because in the second movie, he plays a guy named Nathan Cutting Brittles. These are all kind of based on real guys. And then in this movie, he plays York, but it's like York with an E instead of just York.
Okay, they're like it's like a spiritual trilogy.
Yeah, right. And so Johnson and Carey are in this. They're also in the second movie, which is She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, but they're not in the first. I think I have this right. And then the guy who plays Quincannon, the sergeant, Victor McLaughlin, he's in he's in this one and like the first one, I think. So there are elements that tie them all together, but that's just like because John Ford just called up the same crew. It's like, who wants to go back to Utah and shoot another movie?
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. I like those kind of situations too.
Yeah.
Why not?
Ford liked making these pictures, but he did not want to make this picture. He felt like, they'd done two films with the cavalry background with Wayne, and he felt like we've covered all the territory that we really can here. But he had made a deal with the studio that if he would do this, then they would fund The Quiet Man, which is the movie that he wanted to make. And it was a good move because The Quiet Man became much more popular than this, won Oscars, and is still remembered today as a great film. But
so this is like the Dark Knight Rises of
this
movie.
So he can make Interstellar or something like that.
I think it was Inception or something.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I can see that. Yeah. And for that reason, this was a really quick shoot. It was like 32 days. And Ford apparently it was like a really fun shoot because Ford wasn't as like obsessed with getting all the details right. And so everybody had a really good time, although it was really hot in Utah in the summer. But yeah, they shot it out in like 32 days and Ford's just like, yeah, that's great. That takes fun. Keep going. And didn't work the crew too hard.
It's funny you say that, like that the details were less important and that he was like, we got to have like Roman writing in here.
Right, yeah.
Because like that's all the kind of stuff I actually liked in the movie was like there was just like random disparate elements that were fun. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Or like, oh, that's cool or whatever. But like the like story that kind of anchored it all, I was like not invested in at all. I just could not care.
Yeah.
But luckily there was like Roman rioting, there was like there was a lot of gags, some fights, and like plenty of songs, and I was like, okay, this is fun. Like, yeah, like it showed a lot actually in the songs that there were like extended musical scenes where the main characters just like look at each other. And it's like the music is doing all the work,
Yeah, they had the Sons of the Pioneers, which was a Western music group in the movie, to fill in that time. And I think Ford was a little annoyed that so much of it was songs, but at the same time, he didn't have much of a script to fill out the time. It's only 100 or so minutes, and so that's another concession that he had to make. But it does give it a certain character, and apparently that's somewhat accurate. the cavalry did do a lot of singing, and as we see in the film, just for PT or just for, riding on the range or whatever to keep their spirits up.
Yeah, most of those songs were pretty cool, except for like the Yellow Stripe song. They did it a couple times. I was like, I've heard this enough.
Yeah, give me more of that. My girl is purple.
Yeah.
That's what
I liked the one where she was like, he's like, I didn't request this song, and I was like, no, you're blowing it.
Yeah, I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen. Yeah, which is an Irish song. Ford is Irish, and it is pretty much contemporary. I think that song was written about 3 or 4 years before this movie is supposed to take place in 1879.
Oh, not accurate.
So, yeah, I don't know. We've got a guy who's like a French Foreign Legion officer in this. So, things travel around the West.
Oh, eye patch dude.
Yeah. But
he was sick.
But it's funny, though, because as far as Star Trek connections go, that song is, of course, sung by Riley in The Naked Time in the original TOS episode. Yeah.
Wow. I did not remember. I remember him singing. I didn't remember that song. Wow.
Yeah. Of course, I don't know if the song came first or naming the character Kathleen came first, but it is a cute little moment. And I do like how John Wayne's like, no, I didn't. That's not me. I'm not. You think I'm doing a thing? This isn't like Valentine's Day. They just decided to sing that.
And she's like, I wish it was. And I was like, man, you blew it.
That was your chance. Yeah, that woman, of course, is Maureen O'Hara, who would star with John Wayne in 5 pictures total and also work with Ford quite a few times.
Yeah, she was pretty cool, too.
She was great. And she, working with Wayne so many times, if she died in 2015, but if I ever met her, I would ask, what's it like acting opposite John Wayne? Because I feel like he's definitely a presence, but when you've got like a complicated scene to get out, you've got story to deliver. I just felt like I saw her doing a lot of the lifting in their scenes dramatically. There's a lot of times where she's looking at him and she's, doing her best to show that, there are several different emotions crossing her face, and it works for most of the film right up until the end where they're having the parade for all the soldiers who are getting their commendations. And Wayne is just standing there. They're clearly not in the desert. This is on a set or something like that with a rear projection. And he's just looking just off camera, but she's looking at him like, "Oh, this is our relationship is healed, and I'm so excited that my son is award."
Oh, so you think he's kind of stiff or something?
Yeah. Oh no, he's super stiff. Yeah, it's all her.
I think there's some parts where it's just like some random shots. There's just some like great shots in the movie, and there's some where it's like there's like one where he's like out on a plateau or whatever, and he's just like looking all like wild, and I thought he like, I don't know, it was like I felt like a side of him that I didn't normally see in the movie, but it was like a half a second or so.
That's fair. This is, of course, 1950 Wayne, so he is just sort of coming into his leading man-ness. He's very thin. And of course, this isn't the first John Wayne movie we've covered on the show. We talked about Rio Bravo when we talked about Fistful of Datas. But it is the first movie that we've ever talked about that is based on a Saturday Evening Post article.
Oh, okay.
There was a story in the Saturday Evening Post in 1947 called Mission with No Record, and it is the accounting of a real-life raid that took place around this time by, I think, the 4th Cavalry, a different company, but where they were doing this thing. They were patrolling the border. There were a lot of bandits who were attacking forts, stealing horses and causing mayhem, and then they could just retreat across the river, and there's nothing that they're out of our jurisdiction. There's nothing that the cavalry could do, and so they basically got like clandestine orders to just go over and take them out, SEAL Team 6 style.
There was like, what's that? I was like, there was stuff that was like an interesting premise, but I feel like the movie didn't get me too like hyped or invested in like what was going on there.
No, there's and again, like this is just the way that they kind of made movies back then. I mean, I think we established that Ford's heart wasn't in it all the way, but you could get away with this. John Wayne kissing a girl, standing in front of a mesa, and somebody singing a song about, a wash tub or something is a film. But there's so much in this that we don't do much with. It really, as far as the emotional stakes, it revolves around the father and the son. But there's a whole thing where John Wayne is apparently a northerner who married a southerner, and they were living in the South. And then when the war breaks out, he's called into duty as a lieutenant, in the Union Army. And during the Shenandoah campaign, he is forced to burn the plantation of his wife, and then after the war is over, there's still like all this resentment and everything. And now he's, in the service of patrolling the southern border. There's just like, you could make a meal of that. Could be a whole miniseries now.
Yeah. I thought, you said it was about the son. Like, I thought that would be a thing, but like, I feel like there's just not even a lot with the son. I feel like it is about him and his ex-wife or whatever.
Yeah.
And
the most we get is that they just, they nickname him Reb, but that's about it.
Yeah, like when it started and they like introduced the idea of it, I like the scene where he's talking to his son for the first time in the tent, and I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be tense. And then like they had the fight scene where he was like trying to keep a secret of what he was fighting about, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be tense. And then his wife shows up, and I was like, oh man. But then I feel like I just didn't really see the son doing a whole lot with him.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't interact with the son, I guess, a whole bunch. And that kind of and then it kind of pivoting to being about this other story you were talking about with the wife, I kind of just lost interest a little bit. I was like, oh, this seems interesting, but like, I don't know. What about the son and this whole stuff we were like building up,
Well, they haven't seen each other for 15 years. As Wayne says like 10 times in the film, just to keep reminding us of the stakes. A lot of movies don't have a third act. This movie doesn't really have like a second act. Like, it's just they set a lot of this stuff up, and then the Indians attack, and we just got to deal with that, and that's pretty much it. The biggest runner that we really have outside of the son and the father and the mother is Tyree, who apparently killed a guy.
That was cool.
But he's hiding out, and then this hapless marshal keeps trying to extradite him back to wherever, and he keeps getting away with it, and everybody's cool with that. They're like, oh, that guy.
And he like saves the day in the end, though.
That's true.
He's cool. That's like another thing I liked. Like, I liked all that stuff, like all these disparate elements. I just feel like I wasn't engaged with like the overall thing because of it.
Yeah, somewhere between yo and no.
I think there was a little too many yo gags.
There's a lot of yo gags there.
It was funny at first when it wasn't like, when I thought it was like, there was a point where I was like, oh, that's clever, and it's not like super obvious.
Yeah.
But then it kept happening, and I was like, oh, maybe it happened a little too much.
Like I said, I haven't seen a lot of these like John Wayne, John Ford pictures, but they could have taken some notes from the Marx Brothers, I think. Like, don't make it huge, but there are some like clever gags written into this film, but the movie just keeps barreling like right past them. So all of the Uncle Jimmy stuff, that was insane. I love the Uncle Jimmy stuff. He's always fucking up, and even the kids are like, Uncle Jimmy, oh boy, what are we gonna do with you?
I was a little confused by that though, because I feel like that girl showed up like halfway through the movie, and I was like, where did this little girl come from?
Yeah.
And now there's kids, and I was like, wait, were they there before?
Yeah. It's like the Enterprise. Like, why are there kids on the Enterprise? Well, it's an outpost essentially. Right.
So the Uncle Jimmy thing, like, it took me a minute to get acclimated,
Yeah. Yeah, and that little girl, like later on, she's got to ring the bell to let everybody know, and
she's going hog wild,
and that works out. But as they're sneaking into this church where they're trying to be quiet, she's like, "Hi, Jeff."
That was good.
What side is this kid on? Yeah,
She was like pumped about the battle. That was pretty good.
Yeah, let's just things like that. Like, it's okay to take a little time and do that. They've got the old Sawbones character that reminded me of Dr. McCoy a lot. Of course, Dr. McCoy is probably based on characters like that and played characters like that
yeah.
in his own time in film. But he's just kind of doing his own thing, and then he's got a deal going with Uncle Jimmy where, you know, he gives Uncle Jimmy a little sniff for his cold, but Uncle Jimmy spends half the movie blasted.
Oh, yeah, and he is like all... I couldn't tell like if he was like... how he was freaking out about being an arsonist or whatever.
Because he's like...
he's like laughing and crying.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
He doesn't really know what it means. It reminds me of that bit in the original Ninja Turtles movie where they have to take Casey Jones down into their sewer hideout, and he's freaking out, and Raphael's like, "It's okay, you're claustrophobic," and he's like, well, "I never even looked at a guy." So yeah, he's like, "What? She called me an arsonist." Oh man, wait, what's an arsonist?
That is an all-time bit, actually. Like I was pretty surprised by that in Ninja Turtles. I don't know.
I gotta look up who wrote Ninja Turtles. Yeah, there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's some good stuff in this too.
Yes, definitely.
I don't know if we should even talk about the depiction of Native Americans. First of all, I guess I don't know enough to know if it's sensitive or not. I do know that the Apache...
I assumed no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, them, waiting to attack until all the firewater is drank is a little, But I did read a thing saying that they did use a lot of Native people. I think they were Navajo. And so
okay,
that's cool. But then they didn't tell the Navajo that they were portraying Apache in the film. So when the film came out, and they were just said, "Oh, all these Apaches." Like a lot of the Navajo were like, "Oh, that sucks. We're not Apache. We're Navajo."
Yeah, that's not shocking for sure.
If you're gonna have like scout characters, which existed, like Native Scouts, give them some lines. Have them be one of the guys.
Oh yeah,
they do a thing at the end where the Native equivalent of Chewbacca like also gets a medal for their work in the raid. But of course, we don't know that character at all.
I was like, I don't remember that.
Yeah, so it's a little disappointing.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I was not surprised, I guess, but it was that was one of those things that it was interesting actually. Like that's one of those things of going back to the source almost, and like it was just like interesting to see what's like part of the premise or like the assumption or whatever, the framing of the story.
Yeah,
because like even now like even now the most average kind of movie that even isn't really trying to say anything like will have some more of an honest or like realistic approach to that, I guess.
Yeah,
to like that even if it's one that's not even, I feel like, a great movie. But it was interesting to see like there's so much of that that's just assumed, about like who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. It was interesting.
Yeah, and there's a whole lexicon of information that I'm sure that many viewers would have, as they're talking throughout. There's dialogue throughout the film about not only the Apache and the battles of, the General Sheridan, is in the film, like the battles of the Civil War. And there's a lot of talk about Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett, and they talk about remembering the Alamo. And that'd all be on brand for these guys. And the funny thing is that like, I don't know. It's another thing that like I don't have a lot of context for. Like in this film, it's 1950. These conflicts have happened, over 100 years ago, but yet there's still a certain mindset about them. And so you wouldn't give us like what Natchez is doing. We wouldn't cut to him because we don't want to. That's not interesting. We just want John Wayne to kiss his wife and then kill the Indians. And that's one of the great things about the evolution of American cinema, definitely like in the new wave of the 70s, where you get a movie like The Wild Bunch and we're following these cowboys. But then, of course, we see what's going on the other side because that's a conflict as well. As I was watching this, I was thinking, man, I'd love to see like a modern retelling of the Alamo where we see, Davy Crockett and we see Sam Austin and all these guys, but we're also seeing like what's up with Santa Anna and the reasons that he's, making this war, why he's there. And it's sort of sympathetic on both sides. And I don't think you could ever get it made because, Texas would just protest the film. You couldn't sell it in certain markets.
Just don't tell them.
Yeah.
Just don't tell them what's up.
But I mean, like that's kind of at work here, and not in like I don't think in any like overtly racist way. It's just disappointing. Like the movie's only 100 minutes long, and you could have got another 20 minutes out of like seeing, having stories from other peoples that aren't white.
It's racist in the way that like so many of just like assumptions and or like preconceived ideas of the past or whatever are racist and woven into, the fabric of society, I guess,
Yeah.
But you mentioned like context, I guess, like I haven't seen like in depth a lot of, like you said, other John Ford movies and stuff like that. So I don't know. Like you said, this one, he's not really that interested in trying. So I guess I like this makes me want to now go and be like, what are his good ones all about? Or like the ones that are considered, the classics.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot to choose from. When you look at like the things that he has won awards for, it goes over multiple decades. Like he won an Oscar in the 30s and then he won an Oscar in the 60s. And it's just like, geez, the guy's just been making movies for so long.
Yeah. Cause I wonder about this being like, is this just like is this like a representation of what people think all like the bad, not bad, but like whatever old Westerns are like? Because I know there are ones that I really haven't seen that are considered great. And I'm just like, maybe this is a bad representation of the era. So I'm like nervous sometimes about speaking about the whole era when I don't really know.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, we're not trying to make generalizations, but
yeah.
Yeah, it just it can be sticky.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
The whole thing, is all this is happening because of like imperialism, basically, right? Like we're defending this border. Mexico is, doing the same. We have cordial relations with them, but like these other guys who refuse to, God knows, live in a reservation or give us their land or whatever. We kind of dealt with this when we talked about how Far and Away totally like elides over this whole subject. A lot of these people that John Wayne is fighting were probably kicked off the lands that Tom and Nicole were trying to settle in that film. So, and it made me wonder, like, when a lot of Trek episodes, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit, are based on this kind of military fiction, and it's the idea that the ship, be it the Enterprise or what have you, is an outpost in space, and it is protecting the interests of the Federation, and be extending a hand if you extend a hand, but extending a phaser if you extend a phaser. And it makes me wonder, if we draw so much inspiration from stories like this, what makes Trek different ultimately? Why are we not just perpetuating this imperialist narrative?
I mean, I think it actually does like play on those things a lot, actually. And that's why I typically, I've grown to kind of really like, the Trek, like Deep Space Nine or whatever, that like kind of deconstructs some of those preconceived notions about the Federation itself, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I remember there was like this good article recently about Day of the Dove that kind of talked about that. And actually I think the episode itself sort of like, it's talking about it, but like, Kirk comes to this planet and he's, making all these assumptions about how, they need to respond to the Klingons, and they're like, well, they come because they bring war and all this stuff, but you want to join us, like we're the good guys, and you need our protection essentially, and and the guys kind of push back on him like, and Kirk and Spock in that episode end up doing like, like CIA plots of like trying to like sabotage stuff and foreign intervention and stuff like that, and it's like assumed at least by them, and they're the heroes, that like that's the right thing to do. Though
Spock,
I mean, like I said,
Spock and Kirk are working for McKinsey, and they're getting things done. Yeah.
I mean, the ultimate point of the episode ends up being like, well, you're not really so different from the Klingons. So that's kind of like what I think is interesting. But then so many of your basic Star Trek episodes operate under the assumption of like, yeah, we're going out there, we're putting down colonies, and it's that's good.
Yeah. I think, first of all, the episode is called Errand of Mercy, I think, the one you're talking about.
Oh, is it?
But Day of the Dove is another one with the Klingons where an outside force sort of teaches them that they are maybe not so different.
Oh, no, yeah, Day of the Dove is the sword one.
Yeah, that's the sword one, yeah.
That one rules, no notes.
Yeah, I guess, and then sci-fi gives you the ability to have, because there is no godlike alien in the American Southwest that can just show both the tribes and the U.S. cavalry that they're not that different and they can all coexist.
Right.
So that's why it is a sci-fi story, I guess. Yeah, I guess that Trek always, John Wayne, they're the women folk and the children are kidnapped. And so there's always some plot. We see this in Rio Bravo too, where it's like, okay, we've got a sneaky thing. You're going to go over here and you're going to hide in here and do this. And, and that's how they resolve it. And they never think twice about the fact that they're killing hundreds of people or basically wiping out a culture. And so I guess Trek is different because it always holds back, and it always, ultimately there is some other solution, whether or not that's true in real life.
Yeah. And every episode's different. It's like written by different people, and they have different,
I don't know.
Sometimes it's like the point of the episode, and sometimes it's not.
We've just done a lot of these, and I wonder... Sometimes I wonder why, we're not basing episodes off of Edith Wharton novels or something like that. It's almost always some John Wayne movie or a war movie or something.
Well, I guess it comes from the time the show came up and like what was exciting action at the time. And yeah. Well, I guess anyway, that was the pitch for the show, right?
I guess this was the yo that broke the camel's back. Watching this one for me. Any other thoughts about the movie?
No. Yep. It was interesting. There was some.
Yeah.
It looked good. It was a good looking movie.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But yeah, it didn't all come together for me, but I enjoyed watching it.
It's interesting because there are so many it's so removed from us being from the 50s, which I don't even want to count how old that is, 70 years. And it's also so removed because they're doing something that happened, almost 100 years before that. And so I found myself being really drawn to all the little bits and bobs, the washerwomen and the children and the families that have to live on this base, them singing the song about the bold Fenian men, or like My Girl is Purple or whatever. I found myself focusing on those because they were interesting, but also because, as you had mentioned previously, there just wasn't really that much of a narrative to really get invested in.
It was kind of boring, honestly. But then when someone starts shredding it up, I'm like, all right,
when they start flipping the wagons, then it's time to go.
Oh yeah, or like there was like overall, I would say like the action, like the Roman writing in the beginning was cool, but some of the action scenes weren't that cool. But like I did like that part where he had to bring down the horse to the ground and like hide behind it. I was like, that was like a cool kind of like tense moment. Yeah.
Sorry, horse. You're the cover now. Yeah.
I get it. You got to do what you got to do.
Plus, if I kill these guys, that's 3 horses for me. So we're going to trade up. We barely talked about the amazing stunts that you see in the film, especially John Ford films, and it also happened in this one. The one where the guy who's the coach driver that like goes under the wheels, and then we don't go back to that guy. It isn't like a G.I. Joe parachute situation. Like that guy, stuntmen were known to die on films in this period, and there's no confirmation. I only heard from an interview with Maureen O'Hara in like the 80s when she was older. She said that a couple stunt guys died on this film. And
that's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. So whether that's true or not, it definitely happened on some films. But yeah, it's just amazing what they would do. It's sort of like it's like the Old West version of like a Fast and Furious film. You're racing these wagons. You got drivers jumping out of wagons for no good reason, jumping back in.
I thought about that while watching the movie, and I said I regret saying this out loud, but I said, horses are like if cars were animals.
Sure.
And
that checks out.
Yep. I felt like, all right, there's something going wrong with my brain.
I want to see Vin Diesel in a Stetson and a duster. I know he could pull that off.
Well, yeah. Oh, Magnificent Seven, but with the Furious Seven. That would be cool.
Furious Seven. Well, they did that already, but yeah. Magnificent Furious Seven, sure.
Yeah, I want to see them, the whole crew, go back in time, or Back to the Future 3 style.
Yeah, I just watched Hobbs and Shaw, which is ostensibly set in the same universe, but it's just 100% a sci-fi film. Yeah. So, yeah, I would absolutely believe if they got some time travel in their Fast and Furious. I guess there was a story over the weekend that Universal is trying to develop a Fast and Furious crossover with Jurassic Park.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Which is, I'm sure it's just them like looking in the toy box and like, all right, what do we got? And then seeing what they can mash together.
And just posting about it and seeing how people respond.
Yeah, that's what they do now. Yeah.
It's like, what other franchises? Let's just tweet about all of
them.
That's
what they would have done back in the 2000s. That executive would have just like floated a story about, we're thinking about getting rid of Scott Bakula, and just seeing how Twitter reacts.
Oh, yeah. If only they had that move.
Yeah, your career, Sam Beckett, rests on the opinions of Twitter users. So I don't envy you. And with that, let's take a break for a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more backtracking.
So Caliban, you finally show your face. Just in time for me to blow it off.
It's fitting you chose to hide in this abandoned movie theater, Mika and Hana, because for you, the show's over.
Big talk, but soon you'll be as dead as all the well-loved celebrities we lost this year.
When I'm done, they'll be cleaning you off the walls like COVID-19.
Wait, where's your face mask?
I thought we were going to fight outside.
Oh, come on!
I mean, if the murder hornets aren't out there still.
Take this.
If you want to watch HBO Max on my phone.
I'll start cooking some beans in this old boot.
Just Enough Trope. News, reviews, and apocalyptic views every Monday on the Just Enough Trope Network.
Won't the 5G kill us? Shh. Okay, we're back. It's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. Star Trek and the American Western have a lot more in common than might immediately be obvious. Both Westerns and Star Trek feature characters boldly going into an unknown, harsh environment and delivering either civilization or egalitarianism, two places that have none. An early pitch for Star Trek was that it would be Wagon Train to the Stars, and Wagon Train was a TV spin-off of the 1950 film Wagon Master, directed by John Ford. The pressures and inconvenience of military and frontier life are solid launching points for character drama in any century, and Star Trek is never above the respectful homage, especially to classic westerns, which ultimately gave us the 6th season DS9 episode, Sons and Daughters.
The ties of blood.
Here's my son.
A house divided.
When a father and son do not speak, it means there's trouble between them.
On the field of battle.
Stop pretending to be a warrior.
All I ask is a chance to prove myself.
Worf's own son.
This is war. The Jem'Hadar will cut you to pieces.
Is his worst enemy.
I am not here to call you father.
On the best Star Trek, Deep Space Nine.
When I think about this episode, I think about Worf having to deal with his son. But I totally forget about the other storyline with Zial and Dukat, the daughter part of the title, which arguably is more interesting and is better done, and has nothing to do has nothing to do with the John Ford movie.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Do you think? I mean, I like the Worf part a lot.
Oh yeah, no, I like it fine. I just think that a military commander has to command his own son. That's a thing. It's in the Rio Grande. But military commander has a daughter. He controls, he's part of an oppressive regime that's occupying a space where another lady who is friends with his daughter, and the three of them end up making like a kind of weird ersatz couple. They're kind of like the dad and mom who want to kill each other, who are trying to protect the welfare of this young woman. Like you could do a lot of stuff with. You go anywhere with that.
It's certainly, it is a lot more interesting. Because it's like with Dukat, you kind of see him like, you do kind of see like his tender side, and it seems genuine. But then you also do see like the side of him that's like, it's clearly like manipulative,
Yeah, for sure.
Or where he, when he's like, I don't think Zial would like to hear that and stuff like that. And it's like, But then there is stuff from him that you're like, this seems like totally good natured, like what he's trying to do, but not more with his daughter than Kira.
I'm so tired of the Dukat is right people. I had to beat one down just last weekend, but I get it. I get that the weak-minded would be attracted to this guy who essentially fucks up everything that he attempts to do in 7 years on this show. And his tactic. No tactic. That's his tactic. He does that thing where you just keep pushing, you keep saying the same lie over and over, you keep just presenting things as they are, and that's his thing. So like when Kira's all mad at him, he's like, well, Zial wouldn't like to hear that. And the threat is implied in there, although it's also true. And then later on when she's like, I just can't do this. I can't hang out with you just to see Zial. It's, you're repulsive to me. And he's like, no, that's not, we need to sit down and talk about this. It's like, he's not going to just give up. He's not going to be, he's a very petty man, but he knows how to keep the story straight, and to stay the course to try to get what he wants. Because if he did that, if he just exploded and broke something and yelled at her, it would just be proving her completely right. He has to keep playing this character. And I think he's fooled himself. I think he believes all the shit that he says. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It seems like he believes it. But then, it's like he both believes it, but he also is like master manipulator.
Yeah. It's a tactic of manipulation, but I think that he has convinced himself, and we see it in when she brings the dress back and storms out, and then he immediately just gives it to Zial. It's like he's not going to let an opportunity go to waste.
I also kind of get this idea of like it, and maybe this is something throughout the series, but like being the type, like I feel like he seems like someone who, I wouldn't say has had to, but has like insisted on being someone who's like aggressively sticks to the lie you've constructed, because like that would have benefited him many years as like a Cardassian, gull or whatever, a commander, like basically to survive in their type of society. And so like it makes him to me like a good, like, look at what kind of thing like they have produced,
Yeah, it got me thinking about what it's like to be like, what families are like in Cardassian society, because you could look at everybody, they've all got smooth foreheads, pink skin or whatever, and the father is manipulating the daughter because they've finally grown close to get to the woman that he wants, and the daughter is oblivious to it, right? But at the same time, and that could play totally, because Zial could also convince herself that he's actually changed. She's also got that self-delusion gene, maybe. But is there something about Cardassian society in that a gull with a daughter like Dukat can tell her, well, I had to do all those things, and I had to abandon you on the station before. You understand that it's all for the betterment of the people and for success, because that's the Cardassians are, their society is like that. And she can feel bad about that because she's a human being, or a Cardassian being, but also psychologically, like, she's been socialized to kind of accept that. And then when she goes to Kira and she's like, I really wish that you would come to this party, that you would have dinner with us, she just can't understand that it's such an imposition. It's the last thing that Kira wants. Like, I wonder if that's just the way that Cardassian personalities are.
Well, if I'm going by all the parenting we've seen, I think of like the first episode that they have a Cardassian child in is Chain of Command, where he's like, "Oh yeah, like humans don't love."
Oh yeah, that's
like
a good point. Yeah,
and it's just like subjecting them to the horrors. Then I think of the one where they try to convince Kira that she is a Cardassian operative.
Yeah,
and they like, and in that one, the character they think thinks that she is, like committed herself to going underground in this Bajoran sect, for the love of her country or whatever. Even when her dad was like he was like, maybe don't do that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of interesting, I guess. So like we've at least seen like the indoctrination, you know, whether it's from a parent or from the nation or the state itself or whatever.
Yeah. I do like that she dropped out to do art though. She drops out of college to do her little paintings. That's maybe a little bit of rebellion. The cultural psychology of a lot of different cultures gets explored in this episode, specifically in the indoctrination that we see in Klingon society, an indoctrination that Alexander has not had, playing with his big wheel in Russia with his grandparents instead of being raised by Worf. And that particular bird comes home to roost for Worf in this episode.
Yeah, I thought this was really well done too. Like, I always like the Klingon stories because they're like they're always very like humanizing to these characters, but also like sometimes like it makes me think about like things in ways that I wouldn't like trying to figure out Alexander's motivations. You know, it crosses both those things where it's like they have the human element, but then like there's all this like Klingon honor and stuff like that I like. It's really interesting to probe at when it's like it's a totally different mindset. Like I couldn't even imagine, you know, being concerned with this like honor code or whatever. But of course we're concerned with our own sets of, you know, mores and expectations or whatever, you know.
Yeah, there's a very the Klingons are not complex, I don't think, when it comes to psychology. I think that they maybe they're, I don't know, objectivist or something like that. They're about means and ends. And there's a scene where Martok is talking to Worf about having this, his kid on the ship, and he basically just says, when a father and son do not speak, it means there's trouble. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah. It's not very complicated. It's not like a theory of the mind, but he's like, look, there's a problem. We got to deal with it. And however we have to deal with that, we need to take care of this because we don't want shit going wrong when the Jem'Hadar attack.
Well, I guess always what makes it even more interesting is that it's always then like these kind of, with Worf and Alexander now too, like kind of these like outsider interpretations, of how they think their culture should be, or like, what their cultural standards are.
Yeah.
And that's always interesting. And then like looking from the outside of that and being like, oh, okay. That's interesting. But and then there's also the fact that like, a majority of the Klingons are like very contradictory in what they actually believe, which is something also very identifiable. That's very easy to understand how a culture can say they value one thing and every way they act totally disregards that.
Well, I could make a few comments about modern societies, but we'll keep it to the things that we saw for this episode. It's very,
right.
It's much more, this is kind of what I was talking about with Rio Grande, is that it's very simple. Just watching the movie, you get it. Like, he is an officer, he is respected, and he doesn't want somebody with his name mucking that up for him. And that's pretty much it. Like, we never question that the kid was raised in the South and he's a Northerner or anything like that. Like, but here, you're right. Like, there's a lot. Worf has a lot of guilt over the fact that he's just abandoned his kid, basically. And Alexander has a lot of resentment as far as that goes. And is he seem like a good Klingon? Will he lose respect with his crew if a kid with his name or a kid who is his son is is the fuck up, which he kind of ends up being. What did you think about that? The parallel between the character of Jeff in Rio Grande and Alexander in this, in that Jeff, Jeff holds his own in a fight. Later on, he joins the raid, although they put this little comedy beat in where he misfires the gun, and it seems like he's still kind of a screw-up. And in this, Alexander, we end the episode. You think Alexander's going to pull something off and people are going to go, this kid's all right. He's all right. Not really. Instead, he kind of becomes the mascot of the ship. And everybody kind of feels protective of him. And he never actually becomes the warrior that he wants to be.
I thought that was a little bit more interesting because the Jeff stuff felt like it felt more like one-offs, and it didn't really feel like we saw something come through. And I like that it was because ultimately Alexander, it was the whole time, it was what are you here for? And it was kind of for something that he was trying to prove himself in a way he didn't really want to do or need to do. Yeah. And so I liked that it was he's actually bad at this. And, and it was nice that at the end where it's kind of reconnecting. That was just kind of heartwarming.
Yeah, because we get a scene that there's a lot of similarities between Rio Grande and this, and I think they're really intentional. There's a lot of scenes where Worf is talking to Martok, and they're drinking, say, Warnog, instead of the duty coffee that Sheridan and York talk about. There's a line in Rio Grande where they asked for 180 men and they got 18. And I think in this, it's a small starship. They say that they asked for 15 men and they got 5. The 5 that come on board. One of whom is Gabrielle Union, makes her appearance as a Klingon.
I noticed her in the credit. Yeah, I was like, oh.
Yeah, she doesn't really do much, but she's there. Yeah. And so there are these parts where it quotes it, but then there's other parts where things are very different, mostly because we're not trying to kill Apaches in this. And there's a scene where Martok goes to the boy and basically, like you said, says, what are you doing here? I need to know what you're doing here, because everybody here, they're smart, they're dumb, they're good or bad. They all want to fight and die for the Empire, but I don't know why you're here, and that's going to be a problem. And in Rio Grande, we resolve it somewhat because Jeff gets a commendation that he's a hero, but I think it's kind of understood that he is going to go back and go off the line, right? And
yeah.
We don't get that in this. You would expect that maybe oh, Alexander, I found you a great posting. You're going to be on Starship 565, helping deliver war supplies. He stays on the Rataran at the end. And he joins the House of Martok, along with Worf. So,
well, that's what he was really after, I feel like, whether it was
becoming
his intended
becoming
goal,
his father's son officially.
Or at least I don't think that's what he thought he wanted, but just I think it had everything to do with Worf,
Yeah.
And not really I don't know. I don't think he really was I want to fight for the Klingon Empire or whatever.
So it seems like you'd write a script or a scene then where, Worf, this is a little, hack, but Worf is in trouble somehow, and then Alexander saves him at some personal cost to himself. And then Worf's like, yeah, okay, this boy, he has the fire of Kahless in him. But instead, it's just the last that it was the last thing with him is did he lock himself in the? Yes, he locked himself in the bulkhead, sir. Yes.
I just because it led to because a big thing was you keep sending me away, and then it was well, now I'm going to, I'm going to connect with you now, and I'm going to be there for you. Basically,
stuck with me now.
Yeah, right. Whereas I feel like they resolved the Jeff thing right away, and they move on to what's the deal with the mom? Because right away he's I'm here.
Yeah,
it's fine. And then there's none of that tension where I feel like it is constant in the Trek episode.
Yeah, no mom in this one. Mom's been gone for a while.
Yeah, that's fair.
For 15 years.
Where were the Rozhenkos?
Yeah, right. Bring Tevye back. God, I wish that we'd gotten to see Worf's parents again. That would have been great. It is a little different. I have to wonder if, of course, Susie Plaxton went on to play many other great characters in Star Trek, but if they had kept Kalar around, like how Alexander would have turned out, or how their relationship with her relationship with Worf would have developed.
Yeah, I bet if it was like more planned to be a long-term character, as opposed to like, what's the most bang we can get out of this one episode?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
I have to say that we get the relationship between the crew and Alexander is a little different than the relationship between the regiment and Jeff, in that I think Jeff proves himself pretty early on, and Alexander has a similar fight, an officer fight in the officers' mess, where he sort of, gets in a knife fight with that one guy. And it doesn't have like, I don't know, it doesn't, I think the Rio Grande one had a better resolution in that we understand completely now that the regiment is pretty much okay with this guy and would stick by him, whereas Alexander has a ways to go. Plus, that one guy, he deserved to get stabbed. He's saying like, oh, would you want a root beer float? If a Klingon hasn't had a root beer float, he's got to have a root beer float. You can put some blood in there. You're really missing out.
Right?
You're
yeah.
gonna like that.
Blood float.
Get a blood float going on. You're gonna like that.
Yeah, I kind of liked it actually in the episode more, because I feel like it just it kept the story going with Worf in a more interesting way. Whereas I feel like John Wayne shows up, and I liked a little bit where the guy was like, "I'm not going to tell you either, like why we're fighting."
Yeah.
But then, like I said, I just feel like that episode sort of then drops, or the movie drops, kind of the tension between him and the son so much. Like it's just like, okay, yeah, you're part of the squad, and that's fine. But I feel like it was just like the whole time I was like, what's Alexander's status here? Like, what's he doing?
Yeah. I think that Alexander appears once more as at the wedding when Worf gets married to Dax. And then they mention him one more time after that. And when they mention him, they say that he's losing some of his clumsiness and he is kind of adjusting. But this is basically the end of Alexander's arc. We're seeing this, and there isn't much promise that he will evolve from the kind of the fool, the kind of jester mascot that he has become to the Return crew.
No, there totally is.
You think so?
Because he's gonna get trained by his daddy.
Oh well, I don't know about that.
I think it's implied that he's like, I'm gonna help you out now. But then I guess we don't see him anymore.
Speaking of long-term storytelling, that's the biggest letdown, but also the best object lesson. Everybody talks about how like Worf is a terrible father, and it's like, yeah, he's a terrible father because they just never really bothered to write any episodes where he tries to be much of a father. But that's a great metaphor for being a father. Like a father who is just sort of like, yeah, fine, okay, I'll be at the soccer game, who is just sort of neglectful and is not involved in his kid's life. And I don't think they meant to necessarily write it that way, but it becomes perfect. Like, absolutely, like,
it really
headcanon, we should definitely assume that he will then now connect with his son more, but he doesn't. And he gets married to like this young hot wife, and then she dies, and now he's got to like, be the strategic command officer, and he's got to deal with all the Klingon politics in season 7. And it's like, there's always something that's going to keep Worf from being a father to Alexander. And that just continues throughout the rest of the series.
I think there's like assumptions you can make now, though.
Right,
like,
but show it on screen. Like every single day, Cisco is hugging Jake about something and giving him some jambalaya.
Oh, one of them, yeah. I get your point, but I think it's implied now that they're talking. You know what I mean? Like we don't see Worf talking to the Rozhenkos all the time, but like we assume they resolved their differences or whatever, or even like with Picard and his brother. They kind of reconnected, and I think we can assume like they're tight now, but we don't need to see them hanging out all the time or talking.
I guess, but I mean, we get literally half the weeks in the year we were hanging out with these people, and we've got an hour to do it, and so like one or two lines would be easy.
You know me, I'm not opposed to more Worf or anything, but I felt like this episode,
that's what's going
to me,
on. You got to defend your boy.
I felt like this episode was like the end of the Alexander arc.
Yeah.
Even though even though he doesn't end like heroic, I was just like that. This is like we finally put the final word on it, because like it's easy to think like, or it's like obvious to say like, oh, he's a bad father, when it's like the last we ever saw him interact with the son is like, okay, you got to go live with your grandparents. See you later.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like, okay, so what then you have questions. But I don't know. I feel like this kind of put the questions to bed for me of like, okay, I know where they're at.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, if he ever showed up ever again, I'm sure he's in extended media, but you know, if we had a Worf show like we want, I mean, we need to definitely pick up this Alexander thread.
It would be, I mean, I would also be fine if it came back and it was like, you dropped the ball again, and now I'm older and I'm more pissed.
It's just that
that's I don't know. That actually sounds bad.
The cats in the cradle in Star Trek, going on and on. Because now he doesn't have any time for Worf. That's how that song ends. Martok should not have his socket to people when he's talking to them. I know, like, it's a TV show, you have to do camera setups, but there's a couple times when he's like, turns to the side and he's like, but I'll tell you, boy, you gotta have I'm over here, sir. Like, he's blind in that eye. All of his setup should be from the right side, but that's just me.
He's a free spirit.
He's just, I know he's over there somewhere. I'll just say this part.
A Klingon warrior does not worry about that kind of thing.
In battle, you better worry about that.
Oh, yeah.
A couple facts for this episode. Of course, people accused Alexander of having soap opera rapid aging syndrome because, I don't know if I haven't done the math, but how old is he supposed to be exactly? But a lot of that, or like how fast do Klingons mature, I guess. But a lot of that, of course, is due to the fact that having child actors on the set means a totally different setup for the production and how much time that they can work. And having him be a center of the episode, they just went ahead and just had an adult actor that can act younger rather than having a child actor.
You know, now it doesn't matter now, because now if you're watching the show, if you're binge watching it, you don't know how much time is passing in Star Trek.
Sure. And it certainly has been a while since we've seen him.
Yeah. It's just like, whatever. He's older now. It's fine.
And apparently when this episode originally broadcast in the UK, there were like 25 seconds cut from the ceremony at the end because of all three Klingons cutting their hands with the same knife and then pouring the blood in the thing. In the cut version, only Martok cuts his hand. And apparently the reason was, it wasn't like violence necessarily, but it was during the 90s, and they didn't want to...
Satanic panic?
Well, that would have probably been the 80s, but that's a good guess. They didn't want people to...
AIDS.
AIDS, HIV. They didn't
I wanted to guess.
They didn't want people to emulate this because they were worried about HIV transmission.
I don't know why the first thing I thought of was like, oh, we don't want our kids to start following these occult Klingon rituals.
They already look like they're demons. They're going to be worshiping the devil.
It's like that Voyager episode where the doctor's kids start hanging out with the Klingons.
Yeah, right.
Oh, they got pain sticks. Yeah, okay, well, that's
Johnny,
fair, I guess.
Don't do pain sticks. Not even once. Yeah.
They're still like, don't recreate this because the AIDS... Okay, yeah, that's fair, I guess.
But it is okay to show your art drawings to your real dad and your fake mom. That's fine.
Yeah, the whole episode needs to be censored.
Well, something that makes Trek is the technology of the future. It sometimes facilitates what the characters are doing, but just as often the actual complication is the technology. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies, and we add what we get to the non-Trek media, we subtract it from the Trek episode, and see how each would be different. We call it our technological exchange. And our list of technologies reads like this. We've got phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And if I roll on my random number selecting device technology, I get a 1. One is phasers. So this is
okay.
Wow, I feel like this is going to really open it up. Yeah. If phasers exist in the world of Rio Grande, where are we at?
You cannot hide behind a horse.
That's not going to work.
That's for sure.
That horse gets vaporized, and then is gone.
Really, anything. There's not much in the world of this show that you could really hide behind. Like they're hiding behind wagons. You could totally torch up a wagon with one.
There's a couple things I can see because, of course, the gun is the real equalizer here, right? Like at this point in history, there's not only guns everywhere, but there's cartridge guns everywhere. They're not breech-loading rifles or anything like that, or muzzle loaders. And so you've got the revolvers, you've got rifles that use those. It seems like even the other side has those as well. So they're both pretty much up to date technologically, although John Wayne does get shot by an arrow in that one scene. So are all guns phasers, or are phasers an option for the well supplied? Like, would only the cavalry have phasers and they're up against tribes with guns? Or do the tribes have phasers as well?
Well, it could turn the tide, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like a game of
it could be
bow and arrow, gun, phaser.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So John Wayne just gets vaporized in that last scene. Like, is it an asymmetric warfare situation where, the cavalry is just wreaking havoc on the tribes?
That you'd have to you'd have to think about where these phasers are coming from.
Yeah, it's the Colt phaser. Yeah, the repeating phaser. Because
that it's a matter of who's got the technology, I guess. Because that seems like a big factor in a lot of wars, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking about that specifically. We're always on the same wavelength because you were talking about how horses are cars, and I was thinking about how wagons are APCs. When they're getting ready to do this raid across the river, they're rushing in with their guys, and they've got a wagon with like 12 guys in it. Like that's a personnel carrier, but there are no tanks. There is nothing that's a tank really. You could put armor on a horse, I guess, but the horse would be really slow. And so there is like technological progress does, tessellate to new kind of emergent ways to fight. And so I was thinking, obviously the cavalry would have phasers because they're backed by the War Department and the U.S. government. But if your soldiers are always going to die. If you kill enough soldiers and you're a rebel or a tribesman, you've got some phasers, right? So on a long enough timeline, everybody would have the same technology because technology can only get so high at this point. Now, if John Wayne had a tank and the Apaches stole the tank, but they can't make gas or they can't service the tank, eventually the tank is shot, right? But if everybody's using horses, but you have a phaser, which is like a clean weapon that has like an unlimited amount of bullets, I think everybody's got phasers here. I think it's just like one big laser war on the Rio Grande.
Well, that's a great movie title, Laser War on the Rio Grande.
I forgot that, you've got Rio Bravo and Rio Grande. Rio Bravo is just the Spanish word for Rio Grande, same river.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay.
That's confusing.
I was forgetting what movie to look up, I'll be honest.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like, which John Wayne movie are we watching this time?
So this is it's a cowboys and aliens situation.
Yeah, only that would also be asymmetric, right? Because the aliens have ships and the cowboys are trying to, I guess maybe you've got like a stolen alien weapon or something.
But the ship is like a tank. You can't just kill them and then you can fly the ship.
I think that you would get, okay, so you want a dark look at the future? The implications of having phasers and the things that you can do with them, I think you're looking at a future like our future today in which we don't know anything about the Custer's fight against the Indians, the Trail of Tears, because you've got the War Department telling cavalry officers to like just vaporize bodies. Like forget the scalps, forget the ears or whatever. We just cover this all up.
Oh, we always go there, I guess, with whenever we talk about phasers, how it like kind of desensitizes.
Right. I think you have, there's no, the rocket's red glare and the burst of the guns or whatever. It's just, silent buzzing phaser fire and no muss, no fuss, easy cleanup.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, I guess we get to I guess that gets us to an even messier future, probably, if you just got all out laser war across the West.
Or would there be a situation where, and this is assuming, I will buy in here and assume that the cavalry are the good guys, where they're shooting to stun, but the nefarious, Apaches are shooting to kill. Because the cavalry guys are more than happy to stun these guys than, remand them into custody or ship them off, to a reservation or something like that. They just want the land, and they have moral authority, so they're not trying to kill. But the other guys are. If you're a cavalryman and you get hit, you disappear.
Oh, like in the world of the movie or in real life? Because I feel like in real life they'd be like, it'd be easier.
No, yeah, I'm accepting the world of the movie here.
Yeah, because in the world of the movie, it would totally be like, wow, they're just wild and they're bandits and they'll kill anybody. But we're kind of benevolent.
In the beginning of the movie, they've captured Natchez, right? They've got him in the fort, presumably because if we take the leader out, these tribes will just go back to living their lives and they won't be riled up by this revolutionary.
Didn't work.
No, it did not work.
They riled.
Yeah, they got riled up.
I did like when they were like, put out those fires to them, and then 10 minutes later, the fires are raging again.
Yeah, right.
I was like, hell yeah. They lit them.
So I think we've learned that no matter the technology, war never changes. Oh, what if we look at the future and we look at the DS9 episode and we remove phasers from that?
There was a lot more batleth combat going on.
There was.
A lot of hand-to-hand combat.
Unfortunately, swords aren't on our list.
We should add swords because, there's a couple episodes that feature swords pretty heavily. Yeah, I mean, I guess they're out there and they're in war or whatever, but I kind of wasn't paying as much attention to what they were specifically doing. So,
I don't know. The Rotaran is winning against these Jem'Hadar ships and protecting this convoy by being wily for the most part. They're outgunned, but they're doing the we'll slam on the brakes, they'll fly right by us type thing. They're judiciously targeting their phasers against damaged portions of Jem'Hadar ships. And so we just break down into the whole GUI's ramming ship theory.
Punching ships, yeah. Well, the Jem'Hadar can do a lot of stuff that I think without phasers, it might actually tip it towards their favor.
Yeah, I mean, we did say that phasers stands in for all energy weapons, so that disruptors would be on the chopping block too. But yeah, you would just.
But they do all that crazy stuff, they go through containment fields and all this stuff, and they just have all these superpowers that Klingons don't have.
Well, it would be like The Expanse. It'd be missiles and railguns, right? It would be.
Oh yeah.
Magnetically accelerated particles and just conventional missiles.
Or maybe the founders have to get more hands-on.
The founders are like, I'll be the giant fist on the outside of the ship.
Yeah, the Great Link becomes a big fist. That's a good idea.
Punching planets.
Odo turns into a pair of Hulk hands that go on Worf's
fists. Right. Yeah. I was thinking, I'm glad we didn't get, I know they have replicator. They must have a replicator on board the Rotaran because that they don't have a Targ that they're saving for Targ lungs or whatever.
No, yeah. They would talk about rations otherwise.
That's true. Maybe they have a bunch of frozen lungs. It gave us that scene where Alexander's like, have some lung, and just throws the lung in the guy's face. That was pretty good.
Yeah. I like that scene where they're like, oh, have more sauce.
Put that sauce on there. Yeah.
I was like, what? I wondered what the sauce. I'm sure there's a book about it, but what is the sauce? Is it really spicy or something, or what's unappetizing about it? I kept thinking about.
Yeah, it's pretty subtle bullying for a bunch of Klingons. You think it would be a lot of like physical abuse, but there's a subtlety in the scene that they never really come out and say that Alexander's been eating cheeseburgers on Earth his whole life, and so he's going to be scared by the gach or whatever you've got. But that's there.
Yeah.
And then, instead of just like cutting his ear off, he's like, let me do that. I'll give you a hot tongue where we do that thing where you put a bunch of hot sauce on there. Eat it, boy, eat it.
Right. Yeah. I get like the gach, and all the like nasty moving stuff, but he's like, have this sauce. So it's like, he just like have some more siracha.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got to get a whole bunch on there, boy. There you go.
and no milk.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then once they have their knife fight, they knife fight a little, and then they take him away, and he's like, he's taunting Worf, his superior officer, about how like, oh, he didn't do so well. It's like, wow, there's a lot of latitude. There's a lot of latitude in the army of the past when, like, you can just either say, I don't want to answer you, or just yo to your commanding officer, and that's fine. There's nothing they can do, I guess. And then, of course, in the future, it's like, nice kid you got there, boss.
Yeah, like you can bully your boss.
Yeah.
I think if it was
this guy's
anyone
going places.
but Worf.
Yeah, Worf.
Well, as Worf says in the episode, he's like, if it were anyone but me, you would be dead now.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think there's probably, I bet that's like a thing in the Klingon world where they're like, yeah, that guy Worf is a pushover.
Worf's the substitute teacher. We can get away with anything when he's around.
Yeah, we just watch.
He's just going to make us watch a video. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for this episode of Backtracking. What's coming up on the next episode?
Okay, the next episode we're going back to TNG for The Hunted, and how it relates to the classic flick First Blood.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's the first of many Rambo movies we'll cover.
I'm sad. Well, we'll see. I'm sad.
Or maybe Stallone. We haven't really talked about him.
Yeah,
much.
that's true. Huh. What?
We gotta get Rocky in here, probably.
I gotta think about that. I wonder why that is. Because clearly, definitely the people in the DS9 writers' room were all fans of these old westerns. But yeah, there aren't a lot of Rocky films or Stallone films. I wonder if it's because it's a certain type of character that he plays, or if his even like the Rambo films, if his films and his output is too tied to jingoism and patriotism, which we don't see our characters.
But that hasn't stopped them.
Yeah, it's true. No, anyway, well, it's a thought for next week, I guess. Yeah. I can't believe that Brian Dennehy was never on Star Trek.
Right, he would be perfect.
He would have been so good.
Just throw some weird stuff on his face.
Yeah,
he'd be perfect.
Or just having him be an admiral, and he's just he's yelling at people, but he's obviously he's got something going on in the back room. Well, we will explore this further next week when we return, but that is it for this week's episode of Backtracking. Thanks for listening, and if you like the show, please tell a friend. And you can follow us at Backtracking on Twitter, and tell us also what you think we should cover in future episodes. Could we tell the people where they can find you online?
You can find me, I'm on Twitter at GUIFame.
And I'm on Twitter at KA1IBAN, or you can find all the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. That's it for us this week. We'll be back soon, and until then, keep on trekking.